Hey guys, Utah Steve here, back for another video, and today we are talking about the Dominion 2.5 tent from Outdoor Vitals. This is a real world review. It's hard to say that. Basically, I bought this tent in the spring of 2021 and I used it the entire backpacking season. I took it on almost every trip except for one where I hammock camped up at Hayden Lake in the Uinta Mountains of Utah. The rest of the summer, all through the season into the fall even, I used the Dominion 2. And I decided early on that I was going to buy one piece of gear and just put it through the ringer for an entire backpacking season. And at the end of that season, give my impressions overall of that piece of gear. There will be a few items like this in upcoming videos, but I wanted to start with the tent because obviously shelter is very important when you're out backpacking and camping, and I feel like most YouTube videos that I've watched about this tent have been unboxing, setting it up, making it look pretty, talking about it, the specs and whatnot. There are plenty of videos talking about the specs, how much it weighs, the measurements, that kind of thing. I wanted to do something a little different and actually show it in the field being used, and what my impressions were after dragging it through the mountains of Utah for an entire backpacking season. The first time I took this tent out was on the Shingle Creek trail in the Uinta Mountains. In fact, each time I took it out was in the Uinta Mountains, but the Shingle Creek trail was my first time ever using this tent. I had never taken it out of the bag, I had never set it up, I had simply watched YouTube videos and read about how to set up the tent from the little manual that came with it. So what you're about to see is that first outing along the Shingle Creek trail with the Dominion 2 tent, and some of my first impressions, anywhere from the setup stage to comfort level, the amount of space that is available inside the tent, that kind of thing. Just first time right out of the bag setting it up, here's what I think. I want to say that this video is not sponsored by Outdoor Vitals. I just happen to like their products. They're a Utah company based in southern Utah, and I've got quite a few gear items from their company that I've been mostly pleased with. Some of the pros of this tent are it's very roomy. There are two vestibules with two doors, which is nice. A lot of times you get one vestibule on one side of the tent with the door and that's it. I've occasionally seen a tent where there's one door, one vestibule, and on the other side of the tent there's a vestibule but no door, which is really weird. In this case, the tent lived up to its name, 2.5 person tent. You can fit 2 people in this tent, and the half person would be the space in the vestibule. Is very roomy. It comes with 2 huge big net pockets on the inside. Some of the models I saw advertised before I bought it had a net attic in the top to hang your gear in. Mine did not come with that. I don't know why. It's also a one pole system. You just undo the pole. It's all connected with a piece of bungee cord, and you just kind of snap it all together. It's a very easy setup. And also I noticed that the tent came with a large enough tent bag for the tent, which is unusual. Usually you have to cram those things back into the tent bag when you put it away. So in this case, I was quite pleased. They actually made the tent bag a little bit bigger than the tent would be rolled up, and it was very easy to put right back in the bag. That's unusual, and it stood out to me. Some of the cons that I noticed, there weren't too many. One was that mine did not come with that attic net that I mentioned. It also had a hoop hanging from the center of the tent and instead of a little hook. That caused some problems for me. I ended up using my eyeglasses to hang my lantern through the hoop. It became this whole complicated process. I realized I could use a carabiner for that. However, I should be able to just open my tent, hang up what I need to, and get on with my day without thinking, did I remember to bring my carabiner? You know, so that was, it's minor, but it was kind of annoying. it played a role, at least in one of the cons. It's a very minor con. The other issue I had each time I set up the tent was when one end of the tent is wider than the other. Not quite a V shape, not really, but definitely wider than the other. So the poles have to be set up exactly a certain way, and the fly has to go on exactly that same way, or it's not going to look right or feel right. And I struggled with that throughout the summer. I would set it up and realize the mistake I'd made and have to take it down and move things around and set it back up again. So that was a little annoying. In the following segment that you're about to see from this first outing to Shingle Creek, you will see a time lapse of me setting up the tent. You'll see me set up the poles, and then I will snap everything in place, and then you'll see me unsnap everything and move everything around and snap it back up. So that is because of that odd configuration of the tent. But enough from me. Let's hear more from me out in the actual field using this tent for the first time. Let's get that tent set up. I'll do my best to make that happen quickly. This is it. This is the Outdoor Vitals Dominion 2. That's actually a 2.5 man tent. That's why it was so heavy. Why didn't I get the one person? It's simple. I may or may not have someone camp with me in the future. It's nice to have a tent that's big enough. I also want to be comfortable. There are 2 huge vestibules here. One on this side, one on that side. Lots of room for 2.5 people. So you and a buddy and somebody's torso, I guess. Anyway, I don't have it set up perfectly. Don't judge me, I'm in a hurry. I think we're ready to give the grand tour. So here is our home for the night, our house. There are 2 doors and I really like that. There's one on each side. I was disappointed because I understood that it came with a net that hangs from the ceiling to put your gear in, and that is non-existent. So we do have nets at that end to store stuff in. It's a good place for them, and they're tall. I like that. But I'm disappointed there's not even a hook to hang my lantern from. But I have to say about this tent, I really like the pockets. Look at everything it's holding. It turns out, even though it doesn't have the net ceiling up here, there is a place for this to hang. There's only one problem with it, and that is it's a hoop, not a hook. So whatever you hang there has to have a hook. So my glasses are up there, which is good. But if I wanted to hang my lantern up there, there's no way to hook it up there. I would need to put a hook on this. So that better idea would be put a little plastic hook. Now, in the models I saw online, one of the selling features for me was a net that went right here that held all your stuff. But I'm not too upset that this doesn't have it because we have all this net space at the head of the tent. So that's very cool. I do like that. It's humid in here, but I opened these little side vents. They have little sticks, see, holding them open. There's one there, and there's one here. And since I opened them, it's the humidity has left, so I feel a lot better about it. Look at the, I'm filming on my back. It kind of gives you the impression that there's no room in here, but I'm sitting up. I'm 5'10", not that that matters, I'm sitting. but there's a good distance between my bald head and that net. Probably from the middle, I'd say 8 inches. There's lots of room to sit up in here and move. Easily 2 people could fit in here. Some people have described this as that it's huge. I don't feel like that. I feel like this is roughly the same size as any 2-person tent, but the vestibules make all the difference, because you've got this big vestibule here holding my entire backpack in it, and over here, here's an empty one. You've got lots of space. If you have 2 people in here, all your gear can go in there, and you can actually fit 2 people in this tent. So a lot of people know that when it says 2-person tent, it really doesn't mean it fits 2 people. This tent holds up to that. There's plenty of room for gear, plenty of room for 2 people to lay down. But hey, if you lay down with someone in here, better be starting a family, because if it's your buddy and you're not intimate, then chances are it's going to be very awkward. But otherwise, I have plenty of room in here. And do I think I could fit my 2 little boys in here? No, I think we'd be crammed in here. But one of them could, you know, easily. So yeah, 2-person, 2.5 maybe, because of the vestibules, because you can put gear in there, compared to a regular 2-person tent. And so far my impressions are really good. I really like it. Maybe it'll rain tonight and I can see how it does with some sprinkling, I don't know. So I did find a way to hang my lantern up. I don't know if you can tell, but basically I hung my glasses through the hoop and then used the other arm of my glasses to hang my lantern from. So Outdoor Vitals, if you're watching, a hook would be really nice, so that I'm not using my glasses to hang my lantern. It's the only way I could hold it up to light the whole tent. Otherwise I set it on the floor or whatever, and it's only lighting that section and the rest of it's dark. Putting the tent away was pretty easy, not a problem. I thought it might be a hassle, but it's nice because Outdoor Vitals, and this is not sponsored at all, but it's my opinion, their bag is actually big enough for the tent. It frustrates me to no end when you have a tent and you roll it up to put it away and it barely fits around that tent as tight as it'll fit, no matter how well you roll and fold the tent. And Outdoor Vitals thought ahead. I can tell that they made it just a little bit bigger than the tent, and it was easy to get back in there. It took no time at all. This next segment you're going to see is from the Kuberant Basin in the Uinta Mountains. I took it out there and was in a very kind of swampy area where I had the only place I could find to camp around there was off to the edge of a large field. The field itself was very spongy and swampy, but the spot I had was very dry. This plays a role in this next segment you're going to see because I had a lot of condensation on this tent. It was literally dripping wet. You could wring the thing out. It was so wet. Now, to be fair, that's not all the tent's fault. I have seen many people mention in other videos about this tent that they had problems with condensation as well. However, I did not anchor out every tie-off point when I set up the tent, and if I had done that, it would have created better airflow and I wouldn't have had quite as much condensation. Having said that, there are 2 vents that you prop open on the tent to let airflow in from the top, and both of them collapsed under the weight of the condensation on the tent. So they had literally closed during the night, and that definitely added to some moisture inside the tent. Having said that, it was very buggy on that trip. Not so much mosquitoes as much as biting flies and weird mutant insects that I had to deal with up there. At one point, it got so bad that I sat inside just the bug net. I'm happy to say that I was very safe away from the bugs. I felt comfortable. I didn't realize how much the insects were bothering me until I was inside that bug net. So the bug net worked very well, very effective. But enough for me. Once again, let's get on to the segment from the Kuberant Basin. Here are some scenes that dealt with the Dominion 2 tent.
So here's camp. I've got the Outdoor Vitals Dominion 2 tent again, testing this all summer just to see how it does. It's a double vestibule, double entrance tent, and so far I really like it. It's advertised at 5 pounds, but when I weighed it on my scale at home, it was only 4.3 or something like that. So not ultralight, but light enough. I don't mind carrying 4 pounds to be comfortable. I didn't realize how much condensation there was on the tent last night. I don't know. Look at this. You could almost wring that out. Look at that. It's literally dripping and it's sticking to the netting. Now what happened during the night, the last time I used this, I didn't have any condensation. This place is a lot more moist, obviously. But what happened during the night is the vents here got so heavy with condensation that they, instead of sticking out like this when they were dry, they did that. They drooped down and collapsed. And now I have a tent that is soaking wet. When the sun comes out, that'll dry. I'm gonna zip this vestibule out so that it has a chance to air out. Just attach it there. So you can see how heavy and wet that is. That was pulled nice and tight. Look at that. It's just stuck to the tent. So hopefully that'll air out. This side is about the same. It's stuck to the netting. You can see water droplets on there, at least I can. This also collapsed somewhat, not as much. Without those vents open, there's nowhere for that moist air to go when you're breathing in and out all night. It's like sleeping in a Ziploc bag. So that kind of blows. But considering the moist environment we're in and the fact that those vents got heavy and wet and collapsed from me heavy breathing all night, I don't know. I am a little disappointed. I've had tents fare better with condensation. That's pretty bad. I had the clip flashlight too from Sierra Designs. I'll do something similar in a similar environment. So I don't know. What are you going to do? It can't be perfect all the time. I'm testing this tent all year. I'll be taking it with me on my next adventure too, and see how it does with that the condensation on that trip. And if it becomes a regular thing, then maybe there's a problem. Okay, I finally accepted that the bugs win. It's not mosquitoes, it's those nasty flies, and they're biting flies. They don't like my bug repellent, but that doesn't stop them from landing on me over and over and over. So they're making me nuts. So I'm safe inside the bug net. I was removing the rain fly, and I thought, no, I'll just kind of drape it to create some shade so I'm not sitting in the sun. It's kind of funny. You out there with all the bugs and me safe inside my tent. This is a huge relief to be sitting inside this without those bugs all over me. I didn't realize how much they were irritating me. I was dropping F-bombs out there. They were persistent. Those mosquitoes weren't as persistent as those fly bee mutant things.
Now the third time I took this tent out, unfortunately a couple of things happened. You're going to see some footage here of the accidental Wall Lake camp. That's where I took a wrong turn and ended up on the shores of Wall Lake in the Uintas and had to camp wherever I could find because it was getting dark out. It ended up being a wonderful camp, very little condensation on the tent that time. Unfortunately, I lost much of the footage from this outing. The next night I camped in a cave or a little alcove with just the bug net. I didn't have the actual shell on the tent. I did at first, and then I realized how silly it was to have the shell on. So I took it off and just slept in the bug net, very comfortable. It wasn't the best outing I'd ever had. I got attacked by a bunch of Boy Scouts during the night. They thought it was funny. Ultimately, on the third night, I ended up at Watson Lake. I spent 4 days, 3 nights on this outing in the great outdoors, and I didn't really talk about the tent too much when I was at Watson Lake. It was comfortable, it was warm, no condensation. I've got some footage here of it, but I didn't really specifically mention the tent too much. So ultimately I came off of that outing mostly disturbed by human beings' behavior. It was one of the worst backpacking outings I'd ever had because of noise and traffic and litter and being assaulted by Boy Scouts during the middle of the night. Just absolutely mayhem. I picked a busy trail that I had never been on before and I won't be returning to again. However, the tent did just fine, no condensation, plenty of breathability. I didn't have any problems whatsoever. It did not rain or anything like that, so the true rain test came in our next segment. I intentionally went camping during a monsoon rainstorm. I knew it was coming to the Uintas. I debated on whether or not to go. My buddy Joe's like, you should go and make a great video, and it did. It made a fantastic video, and it gave me some great places to explore this coming backpacking season that I didn't know about, that I plan to hit in more detail later this year. During this trip, it started out rough. I had to hike in the rain. By the time I set up camp, the rain had stopped. I decided ahead of time to go with the 2 is 1 and 1 is none rule, where basically I wanted to be double sure that I didn't get wet on this outing. If it was going to rain like I thought it would, and it did that and then some, I wanted to make sure I was good and dry. The idea I had was to put the tarp over the tent like this, to have the tent nestled underneath the tarp, and then if it rained, the tarp would catch all the rain, and I could even drain some of the rainwater off of it and use it as a water source, etc. What I didn't anticipate were 2 things. One, to really test the tent in the rain, it had to stand alone without anything over it. And 2, I didn't anticipate the tarp filling with rain to the point that it buckled and bowed and pushed down on the tent. And then what happened, actually, by the time I bugged out of there due to extreme lightning and thunder, is the tarp began to slide this way because some of my tie-offs came loose. So actually the back half of the tent got plenty of rain, and I'm happy to say that the tent did not leak at all. What you're about to see here are mostly my adventures inside the tent at Jewel Lake in the Uintas during a torrential downpour gallons and gallons of water fell on me for hours. And ultimately I decided to bug out due to dangerous lightning that was actually hitting the ground near my campsite. So as soon as that blew over, the thunder and lightning portion of the storm, I just grabbed my GoPro and got out of there. It was when I got out of my tent that I realized that the tarp was not completely covering the tent. And I'm happy to say that the Dominion 2 performed well with all of that rain hitting it. I didn't get any water inside the tent whatsoever. So very dry, very reliable tent. I was very disappointed, however, where the large net pockets inside the tent are, where they came together, had actually ripped, and there was a hole about the size of an eraser head in the netting. And that really ticked me off. This is a fairly new tent, and you should be able to take a tent into the outdoors and use it, and not necessarily abuse it, but it's going to get some rough handling being in the wilderness. And for it to do that already was really kind of ticked me off, frankly, as I say in the video. I did not have extremely heavy gear in the pockets pulling down on it or anything, but even if I had put heavier things in there, without the attic net to offset some of that gear, I had to put it all in the pockets, and that pulled on those pockets and they actually ripped. And so I was disappointed in that. That is, to me, unacceptable. And also I did have more condensation on the actual vestibules rather than the whole tent this time. Again, a lot of moisture in the air. It's kind of unavoidable. So the biggest disappointment I had was the hole in the net. So I'll shut up. Let's get on with this segment. This is the final trip that I took it on, and you'll kind of see some of the struggles I had during this torrential downpour.
We got it. And I changed my plans a little bit with this camp setup. Decided the best route to take was to put the tent under a tarp, because there's really nowhere to put the tent that would be sheltered enough from the trees. So here you go. There's my setup. It's kind of squirrely. I'm sure there's a lot of tarp fanatics out there who are going to give me crap about this, but just remember that I'm out here to enjoy nature the best I can and to share it with other people, and that's why I'm here. I'm not about technical skill all the time. And so I put the fly on as a, you know what, I just realized that fly is on completely backwards. We'll fix that in a minute. So there you go. There's my setup. I will fix that fly shortly. That's almost embarrassing. But the thing is, one end of this tent is small and the other one is wide. It's like narrow and wide. This is the wide end, that's the narrow end, and I got them mixed up. So it's easy to do with this tent. It's the Dominion 2 from Outdoor Vitals. A true test of this in the rain would be to remove the tarp, but I need something to cook under as well.
There's something I noticed about this tent that kind of bothers me. I'm gonna rip a little hole. I don't know if you can see it. But anyway, it's not focusing very well, but that little hole right there, right where the pockets come together, that wasn't there before. It's just slowly gotten worse. I think it's the weight of the stuff I put in here. And it's not super heavy stuff. It's just, it's bulky, but it's put a hole in my tent. That bothers me. That's how bugs get in. And the reality is that I have other tents that I've put stuff in the pockets and not had that problem. That really kind of ticks me off. I've only had this tent. This is like the third or fourth time I've used it. It looks like we have some condensation, but not bad. Just on the fly. That seems to be typical for this tent. I had the same issue with the clip flashlight too from Sierra Designs. So it's pretty normal, but at least it's on the fly, or on the vestibule is what I'm trying to say, not the fly. Because this part of the fly is dry. It's just the vestibule area. And it started raining. I don't know if it gets worse from here or not.
Very unpredictable, but just a light sprinkle, more than a drizzle. This should be interesting. It would be cool if we had a good downpour and I was just stuck in my tent until it stopped, because it would blow over probably like the last 2 days it has. We may be headed that direction with this. Well, we're going to be here a while. Here it comes. Now, you may have noticed I have this vestibule staked out with my pack underneath it, but this one I don't. I did zip it up, but I didn't stake it out. And the reason why is because I don't have those 2 stakes with me. I think I lost them on my last outing, and I forgot to put some new ones in from home. So this one is staked out. The one behind me with the backpack, it's staked out with a tree branch I found. And I haven't had to stake this front one out where we've been cooking, because it's been my cooking area. And hopefully the tarp just does its job, you know. The tent doesn't get wet, but I zipped it up just in case. So we are safely tucked away in the tent. And if you ever slept in a tent in the rain, it's fantastic. It looks like our tarp failed somewhere. I've got water running down the tent. So somewhere the tarp gave in. Unless it kind of looks like it might actually be. No, I thought it was sitting on the tent, but oh yeah. You could say that. Look at this water. Look at all that water. Oh my gosh. Ultimately, if the tarp fails, then we find out if the tent fails. And if the tent fails, well, it's not going to be fun getting out of here. Well, guys, fail or not on the tarp, the tent is not leaking. You can see up there that I think the tarp is actually sitting on top of the tent. It's just filled so full of water that it pulled it down on top of us. Worst case scenario, it'll overflow and spill over, but so far the tent's holding up. I mean, I had a feeling that rain would collect in the tarp, but I didn't know it would fill up that quickly. That's pretty insane. I think that's what you're seeing here is the tarp actually resting on the tent, but it's not weighing it down because the water is flowing off and gathering elsewhere. 2 is 1, 1 is none. The tarp over the tent, double protection from the rain. This is the first real rainstorm this tent's been in, so I don't want to find out the hard way that it leaks. It was better to put the tarp up. So I might find out the tarp doesn't hold up, but as you can see, I don't think it is. I literally have water running down the tent, which means on the outside, of course. which means it's the tarp is failed. Tarp's leaking. I'm just watching carefully for any sign of leaking. That would be bad. Because if my tarp has failed, and then the tent fails, we're going to have a very soaking wet experience where I'm cramming everything in my pack, in my rain gear, and just getting out of here as fast as possible. I don't think the tarp failed. I think what's happening is it's sitting right on the tent, and what we're seeing is the water run down the tarp because it's not running down the sides of the tent at all. It like runs to here and disappears, which means it's still running off the tarp. I can see water pooling right there in the tarp. I had to open the tent and push all that water off again. It must be gallons just gathering in that spot. And then this part where it was pooling right here, I just punched it, and I realized it was putting so much weight on the tent that this was starting to kind of come down like this. So something to be aware of. I don't want all that weight on the tent. The last thing I need is to be bone dry but have my tent collapse on me. So we're doing good though, everything's dry. So I think just to be prepared, my pack's right here in the vestibule, and it looks like that's collapsed. I'm gonna pull it in here and pack everything in it that I don't need right now. My vestibule's already failed. My stake that I had, my homemade tent stake that was holding it open, is no longer holding it open. But the pack is dry, so that's good. We'll just really see. Look, here's the tent stake I had. I had it staked out. Yeah, it's just not gonna happen. All the weight pulled it out. But we're dry. No wet spots on the floor. I just emptied that and now it's filling back up. That huge puddle right there is from me pushing it off my tarp. If I don't, the weight's gonna come down on the tent. I just kind of rigged this out a little bit, give me some space, but it's not enough space to cook anything in. However, it is gonna keep the water away from the tent. I'm gonna try to do the same thing on the other side. Lots of thunder. Try to get the water off it. But I need to be ready to go if everything just goes to hell. I need to be ready to go. So. Alright, I gotta go. We're gonna stay low. That was close. That was incredibly close. I'll come back. Well guys, here's where our tent was and our tarp. It's now a lake right here, mostly from me emptying the tarp. It was weighing down so heavily on the tent that it almost flattened it. So that's what you call a flash flood. That last lightning bolt you heard on the other camera hit the ground right over by the lake.
My overall views of the Dominion 2.5 tent from Outdoor Vitals are positive. It was dry, it was roomy. If I'd anchored it out better, there wouldn't have been as much condensation. I realize that was user error on my part. I want to talk about price points because originally this tent came out in 2018 and it was being advertised all over the place as very budget friendly at $177. That's a really good price for a decent backpacking tent that weighs 5 pounds or less. However, in 2021, just 3 years later, I paid $230 on Amazon, and it didn't even come with everything that it originally said it would come with. So I was kind of disappointed there, and I recently noticed that it is no longer available on Amazon. So I went on to the Outdoor Vitals website and discovered that they are having supply shortages due to the current situation in the world, and the Outdoor Vitals Dominion tents will not be available until fall of 2022, fall of this year. But they're selling it on their website for $329. So that's quite a hike from 177 in 177 US dollars in 2018 all the way up to $329.97 in 2022. So be aware of that. The other thing I didn't mention is you can set this tent up with just the bug net and leave the shell at home. Maybe if you know that you're going to have nice weather and it's not going to rain. And you can also leave the bug net at home and just set up the shell with the tent pole and have sort of a almost tarp-like shelter to sleep under, sleeping on the ground. I prefer to use both. I've never just taken one or the other pieces of any tent with me, just in case of inclement weather, especially in the Uinta Mountains when thunderstorms tend to just pop up and roll in out of nowhere. So overall, I have good impressions of this tent. I will probably continue to use it. This coming summer, I plan on doing more hammock camping, but you may see it again in my future videos. Give me your thoughts and feelings on this tent down below. If you have experience with it, I'd be interested in hearing about it. Constructive comments are always welcome. Thanks for watching this video, guys, and we will see you in the next one.